To use the mind in a directed and practical way, I begin by asking you to enter a state of calm, which I call the alpha level, using a simple counting procedure. 2, 1 with steady breathing and your eyes slightly elevated, as if looking at a point above the inner horizon. This preparation makes it easier to access creative and intuitive resources, which are essential for what we will do next. When the mind becomes still, it obeys instructions more effectively. It is in this condition that we apply my method. In my teaching, I always begin by creating an expanded screen. Imagine a large screen at a certain distance in front of you where you project images with intention. You will use it as a tool to think in a structured manner, first to observe, then to transform. The clearer, more concrete, and more sensory the projection is, the better it will serve you. This screen is not an empty fantasy. It is a command panel to direct your attention and mental energy. Use it with purpose. From the screen, we move on to the mental mirror, a specific tool for solving problems and programming goals. Visualize on your screen a full-bodied mirror whose frame I teach you to change in color. First, you study the problem, then you erase what you do not want, and finally, you install the desired solution. This organizes your reasoning and prevents the mind from remaining trapped in what is unhelpful. The sequence is deliberate and has its purpose. Begin by placing the mirror with a blue frame. This color marks the current state, the situation exactly as it is. Project the problem there, observe the essential details, and make a brief analysis without dramatizing. When you have enough clarity, erase the image and withdraw your mental energy from what is unwanted. Then shift the mirror to your left and change the frame to white. Now you project the solution or the realized goal. From this point on, you work with the white image. To make it effective, keep the practice simple and consistent. Enter the level, use the screen, apply the blue mirror to recognize the starting point. Erase it, move to the white mirror, and remain in the desired scene long enough for it to be imprinted. Do not return to the blue mirror for that same project unless you need to redefine a new stage with clear feedback. This discipline directs the mind toward the result and transforms thought into structured action. This is how I teach people to begin so that the technique works fully. I always emphasize the importance of reaching the alpha level. This state is characterized by slower brain waves, between 7 and 14 cycles per second. In this state, the mind remains awake but deeply relaxed, allowing access to creative and intuitive resources. I have taught people to enter this level through countdowns and relaxation exercises, training the mind to obey simple commands. When you master this state, it becomes much easier to use any mental programming technique. In alpha, imagination is more vivid and obedient, and mental images come to life with clarity and color. Often, in the ordinary waking state, mental images disperse. However, in alpha they stabilize and become more effective. This is why I insist so much on preparation. Without adequate relaxation, the practice can become superficial. The quality of the image depends on the quality of your entry into alpha, and this is a discipline strengthened through daily repetition. Another reason why alpha is indispensable is that in this state, the conscious and subconscious minds communicate more effectively. In everyday life, with external pressures and noise, you may formulate goals, but they do not take root deeply. In alpha, however, you speak a language the subconscious understands. It is like sowing in fertile soil. This connection between levels of the mind is what allows the technique to produce visible and consistent results, transforming ideas into concrete realities. I also teach students to use this state as a filter. Before projecting any goal, check whether you are calm and experiencing inner clarity. If there is agitation, repeat the breathing and counting process. This pause ensures that you do not project anxiety or confusion, but instead purity and inner direction, filled with positive intention. Remember, what you place on the mental screen is information for your deeper mind, and it responds faithfully to these instructions. This is why every detail matters. With alpha established, you are ready to apply the mental mirror safely. At this point, imagination becomes a tool rather than a distraction. You become an engineer of thought, projecting not only what you want to eliminate, but mainly what you want to build. This solid foundation prepares the ground for the technique to flow naturally. It is like preparing the soil before planting. Without this care, the seed may not germinate. For this reason, alpha is the essential first step. When I teach the technique, I explain that the mental screen is like a luminous panel where you project ideas and images. It is not just a metaphor, it is a working instrument for the brain. When creating the screen, You define a comfortable distance, usually in front of you, slightly above eye level. It is in this inner space the transformation begins. The clearer and more detailed the image, the more effective it becomes. The screen is the foundation upon which the mental mirror will be built. After mastering the screen, I move on to the construction of the mental mirror. Imagine a full-body mirror projected into this mental space. This mirror has frames of different colors representing stages of the process. First, the blue frame, where we observe the current situation or existing problem. Then, the white frame, where we visualize the desired solution or the goal already accomplished. This alternation organizes the mind and channels creative energy in an orderly way. I always instruct you to look first at the blue mirror. There, you place the image of the problem or the present condition without exaggeration, showing only what is essential. It is a way of recognizing reality, giving it attention and awareness. But this moment is brief, because I do not want the mind to remain stuck in the negative. The goal is to analyze, understand, and then erase. This symbolic action removes the weight of the undesirable and opens space for something new. After erasing the blue scene, move the mental mirror to the left and change its frame to white. This shift is not an aesthetic detail, but a symbolic gesture that informs the mind that the focus is now the desired future. In the white mirror, you project the ideal result already achieved, not merely as a possibility, but as if it were already a completed fact. The clarity of this positive image is the fuel that activates your subconscious and mobilizes your inner resources. I also teach that you must not return to the blue mirror for the same goal. Once you have erased the negative scene and projected the solution in the white mirror, keep your mental energy only in this new image. If you return, you reinforce the problem again. The mind works through repetition, and whatever receives more attention tends to grow. For this reason, maintain your commitment, blue for recognition, white for programming. In this way, you direct your imagination toward construction rather than limitation. I always begin the process with the blue frame in the mental mirror. Blue symbolizes calm, serenity, and analysis. When I project a problem in this mirror, it is not to dramatize or to play the victim. It is simply to recognize the situation objectively as it is. Just as a doctor observes symptoms before proposing a cure, I teach students to look at reality clearly. Without this recognition, there is no solid basis for transformation. In the blue mirror, I include enough detail to understand the problem, but never stay there too long. If someone, for example, wishes to overcome a harmful habit, they will see in the blue mirror a clear representation of this undesirable behavior, only what is necessary to identify the starting point. Then they will erase this image to free mental space and initiate the change. A mental image of themselves still trapped in that habit. But they do not dwell on guilt or defeat. They simply observe, register, and acknowledge. It is a practice of mental honesty. Recognizing does not mean reinforcing. It simply provides a starting point for the creative process. It is essential to understand that this stage is not meant for complaining or feeding negative emotions. On the contrary, it is a brief moment of awareness. If you remain stuck in the blue mirror, you lose your direction. Keep your focus on the purpose. Observe the problem, accept its existence, and then immediately prepare to dissolve it. The blue mirror is only an entry point, never a place to stay. Once the problem is understood in the blue mirror, I teach students to erase the image. This action symbolizes withdrawing mental energy from what is no longer desired. Just as turning off a device stops it from consuming power, the same occurs with a problem in the mind. By erasing it, you tell the subconscious, this no longer deserves my investment of attention. This conscious decision opens internal space so that the solution can install itself without resistance. After the image is erased, the blue stage has fulfilled its function. It is the signal to move the mirror to the left and change the frame to white. This represents a mental transition from recognition to creation. It is like closing one chapter to begin another without looking back. This continuous flow is essential for the mind to understand the path ahead without interruptions or regressions. From blue to white, from limitation to realization, this is the process. After erasing the scene in the blue mirror, I teach students to move the mirror to the left and change its frame to white. The color white symbolizes purity, openness, and infinite possibility. This is the space where the mind must now focus. The white screen is not just an empty board, it is the place where you project the ideal results already achieved. Here, There are no doubts, only the certainty that the solution exists and is already manifested in your life. In the white mirror, you must see yourself or the situation exactly as you want it to be. It is not about imagining that it will happen someday, but about experiencing the feeling that it has already happened. If you seek health, see yourself healthy, smiling, living fully. If you seek success in a project, see the project completed, functioning, and bearing good results. The subconscious responds better when it receives images of completed outcomes rather than vague possibilities. Here, richness and detail makes a difference. Use colors, sounds, emotions, and even smells and sensations. The brain does not clearly distinguish between a real experience and a vividly visualized experience. That is why the more complete the scene is, the more deeply it will be recorded. This exercise is a form of programming. You are informing your deeper mind how you want reality to present itself. White is the clean canvas on which everything can be written anew. Another point I teach is persistence. Once you have projected the solution in the white mirror, return to it daily. Repeat the scene. Maintain the positive emotion and reinforce the image as if it were a recording, becoming sharper each time. Repetition imprints the pattern in the subconscious until it begins to act silently, directing perceptions, decisions, and behaviors to materialize the goal. White must be cultivated with consistency. Finally, I always remind students, do not return to the blue mirror for the same objective. If the problem has been erased and the solution installed, you must remain in the white mirror. The mind needs this firmness of direction. Otherwise, you will send contradictory messages. White is a place of faith, trust, and construction. In it, you become the co-author of your reality, using imagination not as an escape, but as a tool of transformation. When I teach the mental mirror technique, I always explain that imagination is the creative force that drives the entire process. The human mind has the capacity to form images that precede reality. Everything that exists today was once an idea in someone's mind. By using the white mirror, you place yourself in the same line of creative action. You are shaping your reality through conscious imagination. The difference between fantasizing and programming lies in intention. A fantasy is a desire without direction, while programming carries purpose, clarity, and internal commitment. Aimless daydreaming. The visualization I teach is charged with purpose. You do not imagine for distraction, you imagine to instruct your deeper mind. For this reason, every detail of the scene must be aligned with what you truly desire. This clarity transforms imagination into a working tool, a true architectural blueprint of the life you want to build. I recommend that when you create the scene in the white mirror, you involve your mind with emotion. It is not enough to see it, you must feel it. If you project health, feel vitality in every cell. If you project success, feel the joy of achievement. The subconscious responds more strongly to emotions than to words. The more intense the positive feeling associated with the image, the faster and more firmly the internal imprint will form. Emotion is vital, energy applied to the objective. Creative imagination also requires discipline. Many people want immediate results, but the subconscious works at its own pace. That is why I teach students to repeat the same scene daily until it becomes as natural as a true memory. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity opens the path to manifestation. Just as the body is trained with constant exercise, the mind is strengthened through the daily practice of creative visualization. By applying imagination in this way, you stop being a hostage of chance and take on the role of a conscious collaborator with life. You learn to use the mental screen as an inner laboratory where you experiment and test solutions before living them externally. This practice of trust reduces fear and prepares the mind to recognize opportunities in the real world. Imagining with intention is the first step in transforming the invisible into the visible. This is how I teach creation. I always emphasize that the mental mirror is not merely a visualization exercise, but a process of positive programming. Just as an engineer programs a machine to perform specific tasks, you can program your mind to direct thoughts and behaviors in favor of your goals. When you install in the white mirror the image of the desired result, you are transmitting clear instructions to the subconscious, which it begins to follow naturally. The subconscious mind does not debate orders. It accepts what it receives through repetition and emotion. Therefore, if you reinforce negative images, you tend to manifest them. But if you consistently feed positive, well-defined scenes, that will be the direction it follows. The key is understanding that your mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you plant will grow. It is up to you to choose seeds of hope, health, prosperity, and harmony. Mental reinforcement occurs through disciplined repetition. I teach that at least once a day it is important to enter the alpha level and revisit the positive scene in the white mirror. Each repetition engraves the desired pattern more deeply until it becomes automatic. Over time, your behavior, perceptions, and even decisions begin to align spontaneously with this new programming. It is like adjusting a compass. Your life begins to follow the correct direction. Another essential aspect is to keep your thoughts always in terms of solutions, never in terms of problems. By erasing the blue scene and maintaining only the white one, you ensure that the subconscious does not receive contradictory instructions. If you alternate between negative and positive images, the mind becomes confused. But when the focus is singular and coherent, the programming becomes stronger and more consistent. This is how a solid new mental pattern is built. The result of this process is a mind trained to expect the best and act according to that expectation. This is not magic, but rather the alignment of thought, emotion, and action in the same direction. Thought, emotion, and action aligned. By reinforcing positive programming daily, you create such a strong mental habit that moving toward your goal becomes inevitable. This is the essence of the technique, using the natural power of the mind to program the future consciously and beneficially. When I teach the mental mirror technique, I make clear that its purpose is to manifest concrete objectives. The process begins in the invisible, with clear images and positive emotions, and expands until it transforms external reality. The mind functions as a transmitter and receiver of energy. Whatever you project intensely in the white mirror begins to be recognized by the subconscious and gradually by the environment itself. It is a way of aligning the mind with the desired future. Manifesting does not mean waiting passively. On the contrary, the exercise awakens internal resources, creativity, intuition, and motivation. When the mind accepts the goal as reality, you begin to see opportunities that were previously hidden. Small signs, people, ideas, and coincidences begin to appear, and you respond with greater attention and effectiveness. Thus, the technique acts like a magnet, attracting what resonates with the mental programming you have installed. I always say it is essential to project positive images, not only for yourself, but also for the benefit of others. When you program solutions that include collective well-being, the energy generated is even stronger. The subconscious responds better to objectives that bring harmony and growth. This attitude expands the reach of the technique, transforming not only your personal life, but also the environment around you. The creative power of the mind is more effective when guided by altruism. The time required for manifestation varies. Some goals materialize quickly, others require patience and continuous practice. What matters is maintaining trust in the process and not giving up at the first sign of difficulty. I have taught that persistence is the key that opens invisible doors. With each repetition in the white mirror, you strengthen the seed planted until it blossoms at the right moment. The subconscious needs time to reorganize resources and pathways toward materialization. As you practice with discipline, you notice that life begins to align with the images you cultivate. Manifestation stops being merely an idea and becomes an experience. What once seemed distant or unlikely begins to happen naturally. This proves that the mind is more than a spectator. It is an active participant in creation. With the mental mirror, each person learns to consciously cooperate with this universal process of manifestation. I always emphasize that the mental mirror technique must be used in a practical way in daily life. It is not an exercise reserved only for major goals, but also for ordinary situations. You can apply it to improve relationships, find solutions at work, cultivate health, or develop positive habits. Whenever you need clarity or change, enter the alpha level. Use the blue mirror to recognize the situation and the white one to program the result. A simple example is using it to resolve personal conflicts. In the blue mirror, project a scene of disagreement. Recognize it, but erase it. Then, in the white mirror, imagine harmony restored, dialogue flowing with respect and mutual understanding taking place. By practicing this, you condition your mind to expect cooperation instead of friction. Many people who trained with me reported that they began handling relationships with family, colleagues, and friends much better after this practice. I also teach using the technique for health goals. If someone is facing an illness, they place the current condition in the blue mirror and in the white one, project themselves healthy, active, and full of energy. This practice does not replace medical care, but it acts as a powerful reinforcement. When the mind accepts the image of vitality, it mobilizes internal resources and even influences physiological processes. The body responds better when the mind is aligned with a vision of health and recovery. Another area of application is skill development. If you want to learn something new, use the white mirror to see yourself mastering the practice with confidence. Picture yourself playing an instrument, speaking in public, or performing any task with assurance. This visualization works as mental rehearsal, accelerating learning. Athletes and professionals in various fields benefit from this technique, as the mind trains internally what will later be expressed externally. Finally, the technique can be used to achieve long-term goals such as prosperity or professional accomplishment. In each practice, you reinforce the desired scenario with prosperity flowing, projects completed, and recognition for your effort. The subconscious records this direction and begins orienting your actions accordingly. Step by step, life adjusts to what has been programmed. This shows that the technique is versatile and can serve both small changes and major transformations. After teaching each step, I like to remind students that the mental mirror technique is simple but powerful. It combines relaxation, visualization, and mental discipline in a logical sequence. First, we recognize the problem in the blue mirror. Then we erase that image and replace it with the solution in the white mirror. We repeat it with positive emotion until the subconscious accepts the new reality and begins to act accordingly. The key is understanding that your mind responds to what you project consistently. If you feed negative images, you reinforce limitations. If you cultivate positive images, you strengthen possibilities. The mental mirror is a way to train your attention to remain on what builds rather than on what destroys. This practice becomes a habit, and habits shape destinies. That is why I always say, take care of the images you place within yourself, because they become your external world. Another important lesson is responsibility in using this technique. I have taught that the mind must be used for good, never to harm. When we project solutions that benefit both ourselves and others, we create a current of positive energy that returns multiplied. The mind is creative, but also ethical. By practicing with altruistic intention, you expand the scope of the results and live in greater harmony with the laws of life. The mental mirror is not a resource to escape reality, but to transform it. It helps align thought, emotion, and action. What you project in the white mirror must be accompanied by concrete steps in the external world. Visualization prepares the mind, but your actions build the bridge toward realization. Thus, mind and action work together like two wings that allow human beings to fly toward their goals. I conclude by reminding you that every person carries within themselves the ability to create a better future. The technique is simply the path to awaken this latent power. When the practice becomes natural, you realize that you are no longer at the mercy of circumstances, but capable of actively cooperating with life. The mental mirror is, in essence, an invitation to use imagination as a tool for evolution. This is the legacy I leave, learning to look within to transform what is outside.